East Coast. So if you return to page 29, we're going to go to item 150. In accordance with the ordinance 16442, this item must be declared an emergency by two-thirds vote of the Metropolitan Council. Let me read the item first. A special briefing on the administration's effort to combat crime in East Baton Rouge Parish by Mayor President Sharon Winston Broome. Reason for emergency: to provide a briefing to the Metropolitan Council and the public in accordance with ordinance 16442. This item must be declared an emergency by two-thirds vote of the Metropolitan Council. Is there a motion to declare the item an emergency? So moved by Councilmember Dunn, seconded by Councilmember Adams. We're going to vote on the motion to declare the emergency. Is there any opposition to the item being declared an emergency? We're going to have a public hearing on the item. Is there anyone here wishing to speak on item 150? Anyone here wishing to speak on item 150? We now go to Mayor President Sharon Winston Broome. Somebody's here wishing to speak? Come on down. Reverend Anderson, do you want to hear the report first before you speak? Yeah, okay, so we'll go with the report first, and then we'll take comments from the public. Mayor President.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Pro Tem. We also have some folks here from the Corps of Engineers, so I just want to make sure that they were good with time, and I was just told that they are. Okay. If not, I would have yielded to them. But certainly, thank you all for this opportunity this afternoon to discuss public safety in our community. As you know, since 2017, it has been my intention to continue the work of transparency with our administration. And we are doing that as we move forward. Of course, this transparency includes public safety. And I know our residents in Metro Council deserve to receive updates on the full picture as it relates to violent crime and the actions that we are taking to keep safety at the forefront of East Baton Rouge Parish. Now, Baton Rouge is one of 15 cities in the White House Community Violence Intervention Collaborative, which convenes meetings, facilitates peer-to-peer learning, and provides technical assistance to cities within the collaborative. This collaborative empowers our Baton Rouge Police Department and public safety team to share ideas, experiences, and best practices in order to make our ongoing initiatives as effective as possible. In addition to this inter-city collaboration, we are connecting with philanthropic organizations to provide training and technical assistance, identify best practices, integrate proven and innovative public health approaches, and help the partner cities scale and conduct these efforts. This partnership is one of the ways in which we are empowering and strengthening the work of our administration, our law enforcement, and our community-based public safety organizations. Now, one of our support partners is the Council on Criminal Justice, which works to advance understanding of the criminal justice policy choices facing the nation and build solutions to enhance safety and justice for all. I recently, along with 500 other people in America, attended a webinar that they hosted, Saving Lives, 10 Essential Actions that Cities Can Take to Reduce Violence Now. You all have a copy of this report in the packet that we just provided you. Now, while we still have room to grow, it's important to note that Baton Rouge has already accomplished multiple action steps that were highlighted in this webinar, as well as the report that I just gave you. The first sentence reads, as 2022 begins, America's cities confront an ongoing surge in violent crime, particularly homicides. The Council on Criminal Justice documented a 30% rise in murders nationwide in 2020, while police data from large cities reveals another 7% increase in 2021. Earlier this month, LSU criminologist Dr. Peter Scharf spoke to WAFB about his fear that the current rate of violence appears to show no sign of slowing down anytime soon. And it is apparent that public safety and crime experts across our nation agree violent crime is on the rise in our nation. Now, I want to make this extremely clear. It is past time for us to wake up and understand the reality of the situation that we're in. We can't afford to sit back and let the weight of violence fall on one person, one agency, or one organization. The experts have stated this will continue for the time being. But I'm encouraged that we all have a fighting chance in our community. And so that means that we all have to work together to create and implement solutions. Our citizens depend on it. So you'll find that this report highlights the approach of housing strategic responsibility for violence reduction efforts. At the top is cited number 6. One of my top priorities as your mayor president is to comprehensively take action to reduce violent crime now. And so to do this, we have focused efforts on building an ecosystem of public safety built upon law enforcement, community engagement, along with mental health and other social services. The leadership within our administration, the Baton Rouge Police Department, the Sheriff's Office, and the District Attorney connect on a weekly basis, and this will continue as we work towards positive results in our parish. I always believe that we are stronger together, and this is especially true as it relates to public safety. So we've made valuable strides and investments in addressing poverty, inequality, and other underlying systemic causes of violence through the lens of law enforcement and community-based approaches. The Council on Criminal Justice report also identified the need for both a short-term and a long-term approach. The foundation of this violence reduction is already in action among our city parish government, our law enforcement agencies, and judicial partners. This collaborative effort will continue to take the best of what we already are doing, that we know is working, and we're going to continue to identify what we need to do to change. And so today, I stand before you in collaboration with our public safety leaders for East Baton Rouge Parish. I'm joined today by District Attorney Hiller Moore, Baton Rouge City Police Chief Murphy Paul, and East Baton Rouge Parish Sheriff's Office Majors Todd Morris and Major Anthony Ponton, who are here on behalf of Sheriff Sid Gotro. And so now let's talk about the work that is happening now and our short-term and long-term actions. I'm going to ask that Chief Paul, Major Morris, and Major Ponton come up in that order.
Good evening. I want to thank you for having me so we can discuss some of the cooperative efforts of the Baton Rouge Police Department to reduce crime in our city. First, I want to thank each and every one of you for your support of the men and women of the Baton Rouge Police Department and all the law enforcement officers in our community. Specifically from your approval from our ARP dollars, the merit increases, and the raises that were led by our mayor over the past year and a half, I tell you, your support is greatly appreciated. A strategic plan requires a holistic approach with an emphasis on prevention, intervention, and enforcement. And it involves not just law enforcement, but a response involving all stakeholders: education, business, faith-based community, community organizations, other disciplines in the criminal justice system, our legislative bodies, and our most important partner, the community that we serve. I want this body and our community to know that the Baton Rouge Police Department is working hard with all of our partners that I just mentioned to reduce crime in our community. Our strategies are based around both community-led initiatives and police-led initiatives. And for the first time, our mayor is leading an effort where all law enforcement agencies will be working with subject matter experts to create an East Baton Rouge strategic plan to reduce violence, inclusive of every law enforcement agency. So thank you for your leadership on that, Mayor. Our efforts over the past year, we've not only had to address the increase in homicides and shootings, but one of the things that we saw, and I wanted to say it because I know I received a lot of complaints from some of you here today, street racing and large gatherings was something that began to happen ever since the epidemic. And we had to address those efforts because when we shut down the community, our young folks were looking for something to do. And unfortunately, we received a lot of complaints, but I wanted to share the data. When I received those complaints of street racing and gatherings, we had a directed patrol efforts in locations where we received from the community. And we wrote 460 citations. We seized 89 vehicles were towed, 27 guns, and 7 of those were assault rifles. I wanted to share that data with you. But through our real-time crime center and our crime strategy unit, we have taken a deep dive into the data that's related to shooting incidents. And our number one strategy this year and last year is to fill the vacancies within the department. We need boots on the ground for these strategies to work. We have to fill these vacancies. That is our number one priority. And I'm asking for your help. We met with our Chief Advisory Council yesterday and asked each one of our council members on the Chief Advisory Council to bring 2 names. It's GEAUX. Please write it down. GEAUXBRPD.com. If you know someone who has a heart to serve, please lead them in our direction. This is a great, rewarding career. I want to highlight several strategies. First, our federal task force participation with our federal partners. You may not know this, but we have 3 BRPD officers assigned to the Safe Streets Task Force right here in Baton Rouge. And their mission is to build and develop complex investigation cases on gangs and drug organizations, both locally and internationally. One of our detectives handles local drug and organized crime cases, and one detective's role is now to assist Louisiana State Police with gang violence in an effort to lower violence in the city of Baton Rouge. We have 4 BRPD detectives assigned to the Drug Enforcement Administration, and their mission is to combat statewide distribution of narcotic cases with a specific nexus to Baton Rouge, as well as develop cases through the use of technology, as well as sophisticated investigative tools to disrupt and dismantle groups involved in the distribution of illegal narcotics and violent crimes. 2 specific task forces that they're assigned to. One is the Tactical Diversion Squad, and their role is to fight the opioid epidemic with a main focus on fentanyl. Fentanyl is a drug that is involved in all of the fatalities and overdoses that we're seeing in Baton Rouge. One detective has a canine, and he checks packages and parcel services and stations to intercept narcotics packages being shipped illegally, as well as money seizures. Unfortunately, there are criminal organizations that are using parcel services to distribute drugs around the country. The Gulf Coast Heidi Initiative, where they're responsible for interstate interdiction, as well as state and federal money seizures. We have 3 officers assigned to our fugitive task force with the U.S. Marshals, whose sole job is the apprehension of fugitives, along with other law enforcement partners. I would also like to highlight our work with ATF, DA, and the District Attorney's Office and our Crime Gun Intelligence Center, where we are tracking all of these guns, all of these shooting incidents. And what we're seeing, they are related. We have met with our partners, and I'll talk about that shortly. But I want to, before I get into that meeting, I want to talk about our P&I, our Place Network investigation. And that is a long-term strategy where we're not only looking at the crimes, we're also looking at how crime relates to certain places. For example, we have chronic areas where we've seen chronic violence in our city, areas or houses that we've conducted search warrants on multiple times. What's driving that location, right? They're hidden networks. So that is something that is being led through Courtney Scott as well as Darryl Gissel as we prepare to implement that long-term strategy in reducing violence in our city. Our patrol strategies, our PS1 strategies, where we are placing police officers in specific places based on the intelligence, based on our real-time crime center data through the work of the information services and creating dashboards. We have seen some success with that I'll share with you shortly. Our SPI initiative, where our primary goal is to decrease violent crime and enhance community relations in the law enforcement community. And then there's our focused deterrence efforts and our partnership with Truce, where we're trying to identify those at-risk youth and help them by meeting with them, by referring them to services so that we can prevent them from getting caught up in the violent crime that we're seeing in our community. Supporting the Mayor's Safe, Hopeful, Healthy Baton Rouge initiative. That's the prevention, the intervention. Now let me talk about this enforcement piece, because that's what's keeping a lot of you up at night. I get it. My phone rings every time there's a homicide. The mayor phone rings every time there's a homicide. So when we say it keeps us up at night, literally it does. On January 4th, I met with all law enforcement partners in my office, EBR Sheriff's Office, the FBI, DEA, ATF, LSP, U.S. Marshal's Office, U.S. Attorney's Office, Constable's Office, the DA's office. And during this meeting, we identified actionable items that will assist us in reducing crime in Baton Rouge. And this is how those conversations went. When I shared with the mayor and I talked to the mayor about these strategies, she's like, well, is it working? What can we do today? Chief, I want these numbers to go down. What are we doing different? What are we doing different? So we had a heart-to-heart conversation. It got a little emotional with my federal partners, and we put egos to the side. We put jurisdictional issues to the side. And then some of the actionable things that we talked about is how we gather intelligence, criminal intelligence information, criminal data. And we talked about specifically things that we can do to better collect that data on that small group of people that's involved in crime in a micro area of our community. We talked about DEA and how they're going to lead the effort with some narcotics enforcement in very targeted areas in our community. We talked about the FBI continuing to lead the effort on some of these complex investigations involving that very key group of people. We talked about the U.S. Marshal Service. We've identified right around 250 warrants that we're going to be putting together a plan. We've identified a small group of people who we believe are directly involved in criminal behavior. We do not have probable cause yet to arrest these individuals. If we did, they would be in jail. But we created a plan, and that plan is called Operation Red Stick. We've already started with our partnership with the Louisiana State Police, where we have directed patrol. Right now, the Baton Rouge Police Department Intelligence, along with the Sheriff's Office Intelligence Unit, along with the Louisiana State Police Intelligence Unit, are gathering intelligence. Our operations will be led by those intelligence efforts. The intelligence that's coming in is coming from our law enforcement partners. It's coming from community members. It's coming from social media, data from our real-time crime center, information from the Louisiana State Police Fusion Center, data from the EBR Crime Strategy Unit, and complaints from the community. So please, if you see something say something. If you're having issues in your community, please go to Crime Stoppers, report it. All of that information is part of our strategy. Our strategy will also include weekly custom notifications to at-risk persons in our community. We receive actionable intelligence on individuals who may be our next victim. Today's suspect can be tomorrow's victim and vice versa. We're going to have conversations with those at risk, weekly custom notifications to prevent the next shootings from happening. How do our directed patrols look? You're going to get complaints. I want to be clear. Our directed patrol efforts are not to over-police disinvested communities. It's not. Those directed patrols are to have presence in the places where crime is likely to occur. And it's to work with the people in the community to identify who those bad actors are. That's why we're going to be in those areas. You're going to see SRT, our SWAT. You're going to see street crimes. You're going to see our federal partners. You're going to see drones. You're going to see helicopters. We are very, very directed in our efforts. We are focusing on repeat addresses, the houses that have been shot up 3 or 4 times. The individuals who we've arrested, but yet continue their criminal behavior. So I'm asking this body to support Operation Red Stick as we continue to put the final touches on that, even though the intelligence phase has already started. That's a direct response to what's going on right now. But let me be clear, that is short term. Some of the initiatives that the mayor spoke of are long term. And we are going to have a final report when our federal partners leave here that will be made for public consumption. And you have an outline, I'm sure the mayor is going to provide to you what that strategic plan will look like. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Major Todd Morris. I'm the Chief of Crimes Against Persons and Special Operations with the Sheriff's Office. I have Major Anthony Ponton here. He is the Chief of our Community Policing Unit, our Street Crimes Unit, our Warrants Division, and our Coroners Investigators. On behalf of Sheriff Guthrie, he sends his apologies for not being able to be here today. He is unavailable. But I want to assure the council and Sheriff Guthrie too that Sheriff Guthrie is very concerned about the rise in violent crime here that's occurred in our parish. He is committed to continue the resources that he has already tasked out. Chief Paul spoke about all the various task force from our different federal partners that have the personnel on those. We have personnel on those task force also, and we've had for years. We're going to continue that relationship to target specific individuals and groups who are identified as causing violent crime within our city. We have our community outreach program from Major Ponton, his community policing and our street crimes unit. That's very important to Sheriff Gautreaux because we cannot do this alone, as Chief Paul said. It takes a community effort, a community approach, and law enforcement and the criminal justice system is a very small portion of this piece of the puzzle. And so Sheriff Gautreaux has committed those resources to that. Chief Paul talked about some different programs that we're all involved into, our public safety partnerships, our crime gun strategies program, our CGIT group. As a result of that, Sheriff Gautreaux expanded our organizational. He created a new position, and we hired a certified firearms examiner who's at the Louisiana State Police Crime Lab, who is a part of this initiative to help us with our guns that we're getting off the streets. When we talk about our initiatives and data enforcement and intelligence, which is what the Sheriff's Office and we have used along with our partners, we're going to specific areas based on intelligence, based on data. Those directives have been very beneficial to us in our investigative and our efforts to combat violent crime. This year alone, as a result of those directed efforts to the small areas where we're having issues, from our uniform patrol, from our street crimes unit, from our detectives divisions, we had an increase in seizing 22% of illegal guns used in illegal activity within our parish. And those guns were seized not only in the parish, but within the city also, too, because our street crimes, Major Ponton and his group focus not only in the parish, but in the city also, too, and effectively arrest and seize illegal guns within the city of Baton Rouge also. So that's a 22% increase as a result of what we have identified as areas and potential hotspot areas that we go to directively based on that intelligence and based on data which we see. Chief Paul talked about and mentioned our crime strategies unit led by District Attorney Moore. That was a effort from his brainstorm and new ideas a couple of years ago. They put out very good intelligence on reference to our shootings and shots fired data. And we take that also, and once again, we redirect our patrol efforts daily and weekly as it results to the information that is coming in. I think you have some charts there that are with you in front of you about some numbers and crime data from the sheriff's office and the city police. I want to briefly talk about just a minute about, we talked about our narcotics and we talked about our opioid deaths and we talked about our fentanyl that are a big issue now in our overdoses. Our narcotics division has been very successful over the past couple of years of targeting mid and high level organizations. And they have been very successful at getting large quantities of narcotics, guns, and monies, which of course feeds the continued operation of the narcotics illegal trade here in our area. So that has been a very directive approach that our narcotics division has done and been very successful with that in targeting mid and upper level dealerships and organizations. And so that is another area that we have done directed patrol, and Captain Tanner Jenkins has done an excellent job of directing his investigations to those mid-level and upper-level dealers, and it's been very beneficial, and we've seen the results of that. And all that is done by intelligence. Intelligence is a key component of this. And we work intelligence on a regular basis with our counterparts at the city and the state police and sharing intelligence, which we get. Not only we pass it on to the appropriate, if it be the city police. Captain Michelli does a very good job of meeting. They meet regularly several times a week. They're meeting together and providing intelligence. When we talked about community involvement, and not only do we participate in our community walks for reference to truce, we also do those independently when we're having spike areas for Major Ponton and his group also. That is very important to have the community involvement, making the connection with the community so they will call and inform us and give us information which is beneficial to identifying those that are responsible for crimes and violent crimes within those areas. And that has been very positive from us in the walks that we do on a regular basis to our areas that we feel like that we need special more attention to. And they're just small areas within, a bigger sector of our patrol districts and our areas that we are dealing with. Sheriff Gautreaux has committed those resources. He is committed to continue to work collaboratively with all of our local, state, and federal partners. He is going to continue to do that at his directive, and we are doing that. And we're coming up with a plan with our public safety partnerships that we'll be working on here in the 1st of February for a long-range plan. But Sheriff Gautreaux has committed those resources. He's committed himself and our office, and we're going to continue those efforts. When you look at those statistics that you have there in front of you from the sheriff's office, because I want to highlight a couple of things that I think are beneficial when we talk about the increase in violent crime. I want to also talk about the increase in our clearance rates as it relates to the national average and what we're seeing here locally in Baton Rouge. From our sheriff's office, if you look at our statistics there, you saw an increase in our robberies. Okay, and we did have an increase, but also we have an increase of our clearance rate. We cleared 54% of those robberies, but the national average of clearance from the FBI statistics is only 27.5%. And this past year, we cleared 54% of those. So if you look at that, we're almost double the percent of the national average nationally of our big cities or small cities, and these are taken by the FBI and compounded yearly of the crime stats that are occurring. And so we're doing that. If you look at sex offenses, we decreased in our sex offenses that we had reported. The national average from the FBI on clearance on sex offenses is 31%. Our detectives at the Sheriff's Office are clearing 81 and 83% the past 2 years of our sex offensive cases. And if you look at the clearance rates of our homicides, I know you have to compare apples to apples, and we have a smaller amount, but consistently, and you go back for years, our homicide division clears 80 to 90% of their homicides. If you look at from our director approach from the shootings and shots fired, ours are actually down for 2021 over 2020. And we believe that's a result of redirecting our uniform patrol, our SCAT divisions in our areas. And even though it is a decrease, it did not increase. And so we feel like that we're using that information that we get from not only our intelligence and our data and our crime strategies unit, and we're redirecting those patrols. Sheriff Gautreaux is committed to that. He's committed to this parish. He's committed to ensuring that he uses every resource that he has now, and he would continue to do that to address the violent crime and even nonviolent crimes in our parish. And so on behalf of him, the Sheriff's Office is committed his resources under the direction of Sheriff Gautreaux, and we will continue to do that with our local, state, and federal partners to enhance our responsibilities, to be able to enhance our plans, to be able to do a small focus group on our individuals responsible for committing these crimes, and that's who's going to be our focus, continued focus, because we have done that this past year. We're going to continue that and enhance that with all of our partners. But thank you very much.
I'm not going to hold y'all too much, but I want to introduce Captain Walker. He's over our SCAT team. These guys do an excellent job. Like they averaging 10 people, now they're down to 6 people, and they cover the whole parish. So the whole parish. So not just the sheriff's office, but also inside the city. They get numerous calls, and we've been several meetings with a couple of y'all on the board and several walks with y'all. We encourage y'all to call us and to engage with us. If you don't tell us, we don't know. A bunch of y'all have our numbers. Please call myself or Captain Walker. We'd be glad. We love doing this. Our heart is in this. And it started at the top with our boss. He loves the community, and we love the community. So if you need us, call us. We're there for y'all. Thank y'all.
We want to thank the Baton Rouge Police Department and the Sheriff's Office for communicating their strategies that they are employing. Many of them, of course, are nationally recognized as best practices in combating crime. And we know that they're going to continue their efforts moving forward. Some of the strategies, of course, incorporated in what they're doing are called focused deterrence strategies. You may recognize a focused deterrent strategy as truce. Similar strategies have been shown to be a successful framework for creating support for individuals who are at high risk for involvement with violence. With this in mind, I want to hand the floor over to our District Attorney, Hiller Moore, and he's going to discuss the work he's doing to help our collaborative instill accountability within our community.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor Pro Tem and council people, how are you doing today? So, Baton Rouge had a really bad year last year. We had one the year before, but last year was particularly brutal. But I want you to know that murder is not random. Murder is pretty much amongst folks of groups, drug dealing, gangs, and unfortunately last year, domestic violence. I know Reverend Anderson is here. She can talk a lot about this. Last year alone, we had 35 domestic violence or intimate partner-related homicides. That's an outstanding number when you're normally looking at 2 or 4. And a big year last year was 19, sorry, the year before. But this past year, 35. So I say that to say that, Baton Rouge, you may not feel this. People that listen may not feel or see this. Baton Rouge is actually a safe place. Unless you are involved in a gang and gang dealing, involved in drug activity and drug dealing because it involves guns, or, unfortunately, in a bad domestic relationship which ends in violence. And that COVID has just really exacerbated everything that we see when we talk about crime. So as bad as the numbers are, it's a nationwide issue. It's not a nationwide fix, it's a local fix. But we're seeing this all over the place. What we've seen, though, at our office from the files that are being brought in is that the overwhelming majority of our cases now are gun-related, around 2,500, and around 2,500 domestic violence-related cases in some way or another. And our staff is not kept up with the changes, so we've been looking at ways, how can we change our staff to address guns and domestic violence immediately, put an end to it, and we're working on that now to see if we can restructure. First thing I think that you guys need to do, and I know you are working on this, is the police department is 100 folks or 100 and something down. Can you imagine operating at that level without that many people? They have to draw from other agencies and other departments to go out and fight and investigate a homicide. Look, I'm so proud to stand next to the men and women that have been here today and the mayor to work, but the men and women, the officers and the deputies, they work their tails off all night long, and they try to do the best. But just think if they were able to, and you heard the clearance rate of the sheriff's office. Don't have the number volume that the Baton Rouge Police do. But just think if the Baton Rouge Police were completely fully staffed, they had more than they had in just the homicide and the major assaults division. If you saw the calls that these guys go to, it's unbelievable. Because it's not only murders they go to, they're going to suicides, they're going to deaths, they're going to drug overdoses, but you only really get to see the homicides. Just think if those detectives could have teams of detectives that work every homicide like John F. Kennedy was killed. Just think what their clearance rate would be. Just think if they could do that in domestic violence cases or non-fatal shootings. Things would be completely different. But that unfortunately takes a lot of money and a lot of effort, and not everybody has the money to put into that. So we're going to try to focus this year on firearms and domestic violence and some others. We're going to try to focus on keeping those folks who are a threat to public safety in jail, those that are out on multiple bonds. Judges have very difficult jobs to do when they set a bond because they have to weigh public safety and the crime that's before them with presumed innocent and the right to a bail and a bond. So we're going to try to do a better job of informing the judges as much as we can, but they have a very difficult job to do. We respect that, but we're going to do better at that. What I challenge everyone is that we spend a lot of money on a lot of good things. We have a lot of kids in your districts that are struggling right now. And look at Louisiana where we rank, look at Baton Rouge where we ranked when we talk about education, poverty, childhood pregnancy, truancy, education by and large. And we're at the bottom or the top of every list that we shouldn't be at. But we're fighting homicides on one end. We're not really fighting enough, I don't think, on the front end for kids and families. And as a result, we're adding more money at the back end for police, DAs, you name it. So I think, unfortunately, now we have to work on the back end. We have such a backlog right now of cases, just murder cases, over 200 to be tried in our office. Last year, we were only able to try 16 jury trials, the year before 12 because of COVID. Federal court only had 2. So the bad guys know when that system goes down, they know they can get away with things. Our prison population went from 2,000 to 1,000, and I think for good reason, for COVID-related reasons. And again, we only want to keep those people who are a public safety threat in jail, let the others out pending court. But I would suggest that we need to find a way to work with our youth that are highly at risk, and they're waving our hands at us like, I'm going to be trouble, I'm going to be a problem. And I think that we can do that. I think we should generate the funds to be able to do that. And like we do name, image, and likeness for football players that come from the same areas that our shooters would come from, but they're talented people that someone has taken them out of where they are and put them on a pedestal, and they're doing well. They get educated, they get doctors, they get medicine, they get everything they can. The other kid that was sitting next to him in school that maybe doesn't have that talent, and the one that is really most at risk, we really don't pay a lot of money, a lot of effort to him until this happens, and then it's too late. So I think we need to examine all of our systems to see maybe where we've failed in the past, where there's gaps in services. Why did that kid ever get to be to that position? And I think we'll be better off for that in the long run. So as bad as last year was, I really believe that now that this year is going to be a much better year. I don't think we can replicate 35 domestic violence homicides. I'll be shocked to see that. I think that based on some numbers, without going into detail now, I think that 2022 is going to be a better year. It has to be a better year. But the only way we can make it the best is for all of us to work together. I want to thank you guys individually for what you do, all the work that the others that you've heard before me that do. A lot of things fall on your shoulders, a lot of delicate issues that come here. It always comes down to funding. And I know that's everyone asks for money, has their hand out, we always do. So, but you have good people that work for you in these different offices. Yeah, sure, we mess up, and you'll see it when we mess up, but we try to be honest about when we mess up. And we want your support. And I think that particularly the areas that are most affected, that we see more, and it's unfortunate that we always say 02, 05, 06, because overwhelming majority of the people in those zip codes, those subdivisions, when you walk through, flock out the door, and they grab these people around their neck and said, when are you coming back? And that's the truth of it. There's only a very few small number of people, and those zip codes hurt the most that cause the damage. And we need to do the best for those people so they can get on their porch and have a good time and a good day like all of us can in other zip codes. And it's not fair to point them out as zip codes, but that's all we do. So we look forward to working with you in this public health emergency that we have. We hope to treat it as a public health problem, just like seatbelts, just like smoking. You know, that's a public health emergency that we've helped a lot. Guardrails around bridges. We never had them before until people started dying. We helped and put guardrails up. Imagine that. So what can we do about 149 murders and young kids that are killing each other? We need to find some guardrails to put around these young men, young kids. So I'm here to work with you guys in this effort, and hope we have a great 2022. Thank you.
Thank you, Hiller. As we close our presentation, we understand that we certainly need to allocate resources for community violence intervention initiatives. And with your help, with your support, we have allocated an additional $14.2 million for community violence intervention initiatives. So for our long-term actions, we're allocating $1.8 million to increase the Baton Rouge Police Department's technology capabilities, including funding for plate readers and community crime cameras. For our long-term actions, we're allocating $3.3 million to implement gun violence reduction strategies and increase community policing. For our long-term strategies, we're allocating $8 million for the replacement of patrol units and other vehicles. Now, we know that short-term actions are needed and are vital right now. So for our short-term actions, we've already allocated dollars to aid programming for our DA's office, including $100,000 for Chance's innovative gun violence intervention program, $100,000 for the expansion of the hospital violence intervention program, and $150,000 for the innovative opioid project. This pandemic has caused a breakdown in accountability. You heard it from our DA, you heard it from our law enforcement officials. Our court systems are backlogged, leading to delays in trials, which is why we are allocating $500,000 for additional special prosecutors and public defenders on matters relating to the ongoing backlog of cases. Short-term action. So this once-in-a-lifetime funding that we have been fortunate to receive, we're committed to make sure that we use a great amount of it to solve the violent crimes that we face in our community. And as you've heard, it takes collaboration, dedication, commitment from our law enforcement officials, our judicial system, our community organizations, and our residents. Our next action step will be our strategic planning workshop hosted by the Department of Justice's National Public Safety Partnership. That's going to take place the first week in February. And as you heard, and you have the information in your folders, it's a coordinated and technical assistance offered by the Department of Justice. So it will help us enhance both our short-term and long-term strategies, but it will also put our action on paper and in the field. So with that being said, I believe that the data that we're using, the law enforcement initiatives, our work collaborative with everyone involved in solving violent crime will take us, as our DA said, to a better 2022. We're using the brain trust of all of our local experts to ensure that we leave no stone unturned in our effort to create a safer Baton Rouge. And I really believe that this alignment of agencies, resources, and goals will aid everyone in our mission to keep our city and our parish safe and informed. Public safety is indeed a top priority. And I am, and I know you will join me in remaining steadfast in a vision of creating a safe, hopeful, and healthy Baton Rouge for all of our citizens. Thank you for this time.
Thank you, Mayor Broome. Is there anyone here, before we go to council members, wishing to speak on the item? We'll have the public hearing at this time. Reverend Anderson.
Good evening, council members. I'm Reverend Alexis Anderson. I'm the Executive Director of PREACH. I am also the chair of the Children and Youth Subcommittee for the Louisiana Behavioral Health Council. I want to start out by saying that there are some places where we are not on one accord because we have not established trust. We cannot have these conversations about policing and not bring up Raheem Howard or Archie Williams or 640 cases from the Baton Rouge Narcotics Division. We cannot have these conversations when we do not put context to things. I am concerned that some of the topics that did not come up was the issue of zoning, the protecting of low-wealth communities from blighted and targeted properties. I am very concerned that we have not had a discussion or allocation of appropriate and safe lighting in communities that are most targeted. I am very concerned about who is not mentioned in this planning. We have one of the greatest recreation centers in the country with BREC. We have schools. We have psychologists. We have youth programs. We have coaches. We have a number of resources to bring to the table. And yet what I heard was, we're just going to spend more money where we've already spent it. And my point is this: if you keep doing what you've done, you will keep getting what you've gotten. As most of you know, I am in the court, observing. As D.A. Moore said, I've been doing this a long, long time. 1/3 to 1/2 of the cases we are seeing in the 19th are domestic violence. And yet, the tools for prevention were not stressed. I am old enough that I have been down this road. I was here during the 80s. I was here when we decided we were going to arrest our way and break up families and not treat drug addiction as drug addiction. And then we ended up with stories that lasted for multiple generations. I am very concerned that we are not talking about programs like Cahoots, that we are not having an honest conversation about where guns come from. We are talking about the communities where they are shooting. We are not talking about where those guns are coming from. And we are not talking about task forces to use the mutual aid agreements that are in place for the 32 agencies who operate in this parish. And I just want to finish with one last line. We are not having a conversation about how many of the guns are coming from thefts of unsecured vehicles, and if we plan on targeting those communities as well as we do low-wealth communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Anderson. Is there anyone else here wishing to speak on the item? Anyone else here wishing to speak on the item? We now go to council members. Oh, we do have another member. Please state your name and address for the record.
Good
please.
evening. My name is Ava Smith, Ascension Parish, East Baton Rouge Parish Prison Reform Coalition member. As a mother of black children, our children are our future, aspiring for freedom of equality, peace, love for each other, freedom to vote, to an education, jobs, to live out their dreams of prosperity, and have a successful career, accomplish their goals, reaping the benefits of success, growth, and a long life. But whose children are we speaking of? Those that have and not the have-nots. The have-nots are the children who will not finish school because there are no alternatives, no mentorship. their family dynamics does not include a two-parent home with college educations. Yes, we need public safety initiatives from our law enforcement agencies. But, and as someone said, Baton Rouge is not a bad place. So I believe we can combat crime by the people in our communities addressing school attendance, academic levels of performance, and support from the family. Then we can see a future for our children. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there anyone else here wishing to speak on item 150? Anyone else here? If I don't see someone, let me know. All right, we're going back to council members. Council members, questions, concerns, thoughts, ideas, comments? Anyone? No one? Oh, go ahead, Councilmember Hudson. Councilmember Mobley's first, though.
One of the concerns I see, first of all, thank y'all very much for the presentation. Very, very informative. I think the short-term plan really seems very progressive, and I think it's going to work out. But one of the things that was brought up, I think in the short-term and the long-term plan, and I didn't really hear anything about it later on as far as funding from the 14-point-something million dollars that's coming from the American Rescue Plan that we're investing into one-time programs and stuff. From what I can tell, replacement of vehicles, gun violence reduction strategies, and things like that. One of the things that I would like to discuss and talk about is what is, one, our short-term, and Mayor or Chief Paul, what is our short-term or long-term plan as far as reducing or increasing the number of our deputies? And I know the Sheriff's Office has a problem with this also. In talking with Mr. Sid Gotro, I know we've discussed this plenty of times for the Baton Rouge Police Department as far as the amount of officers on the street. From what I understand, we're 100 to 150 down. What is our short-term or long-term plan to get the funding to, one, I know, we've talked about increasing pay, and we've done that a couple times, and I think that's a wonderful thing. But obviously, we need to get these people hired and hired quickly to get them out on the street. I think that is one of our biggest deficiencies that we have going forward, is just not having the manpower. Hopefully, get the manpower in place to do a lot of these programs that you have. So I think that would be one of the highest priorities that we really should look at right now.
Yeah, so as it relates to recruiting, I have our recruiting strategy that is also going to be part of our overall strategy. When it comes to recruiting, let's talk facts. We don't have 150 vacancies. We got 100. When that comes to boots on the ground, over the past decade, we've always carried about 50 vacancies. So we've never had a full complement of police officers. So we're about 50 officers less than we have for the past decade. However, we have about 25 of those in academy. Okay. Now let's talk about what's happening in law enforcement. Back when reform started around the country, there were morale issues in law enforcement. When legislation was changed all over the country after George Floyd's murder, what we saw was in 2020 there was a 40% increase in resignations nationally. There was an 18% increase in retirements nationally. When you look at our numbers, we're right at around a 9% turnover ratio for the Baton Rouge Police Department. We've been fortunate because we continue to have classes. Right now, we have 21. We lost a few through the process. We have 21. We have 5 graduating on Monday. These are police officers from other agencies who come over. And we have, we've already started the process for our next academy class, which starts in June, and we're shooting for about 40 or 50. So we've been fortunate on how we recruit. We've engaged the community in our recruiting efforts. I just approved right around $50,000 in advertising, videos. You're going to see us on social media platforms. You're going to see some billboards. You're going to see us some commercials for the first time, a very aggressive recruiting campaign. So we believe that when we look at the numbers compared to what others are recruiting, we're doing pretty good on the recruitment side and on the turnover side.
All right, thank you very much for that information. I know I got 30 seconds to speak. I guess if I may ask, what would be your expected timeline to be back to what you would be considered full department or full capacity? And I recognize the fact that you talked about you've always been 25 or 50 down.
50
what kind of time frame, with all these initiatives being taken place, are you expected to be back at what you would be considering full capacity as operation as far as the police department?
Before the end of this year.
Thank you.
Councilmember Hudson.
Now, that's with the 50 normal vacancies we have, all right? Let's be clear about that. I want to get 50 people in the June
I agree. That's
class.
why I wanted to throw that in there, that you had your normal 50 seat, 50
and you always have
usually flow in there.
retirements, and the process takes a while. But we believe with our current community support in our recruiting efforts, we think that that's a very attainable goal.
First, I want to thank the mayor's office for being proactive about putting this item on our agenda and coming and having this discussion with us. My question largely was along the same lines as Councilman Moak. So I'm really encouraged to hear that we do have a strategic plan for recruiting, and not only that, but we have benchmarks set aside as well. I'd be interested to hear, since I represent a part of the parish that's largely covered by the sheriff's office, I'd be interested to hear if you guys have similar benchmarks and a similar strategic plan.
Yes, sir. Of course, we do have vacancies as everyone else, but we're in the process, too, of making a new recruiting video the sheriff has, and we had established a new recruiting division itself that we had not had over the past, just about 2 years ago. He formed that new division, also has personnel on that strictly goes out and trying to recruit the best and the brightest that we can, and those are interested in law enforcement. Of course, we need the community to help us also, too. And so the sheriff does have a plan in place. I just don't have those particulars with me, exactly. But he does have a video being made. We have a recruiting division that he has started up, trying to recruit those personnel to fill our vacancies also.
And so to be clear, y'all have a benchmark set that you think you'll achieve your goal? And
yes, sir. And I don't, like I said, the recruiting division, the sheriff would have those numbers, what the vacancy is right now, and I just don't know the numbers.
That's fine.
Yes,
I appreciate it. We'll follow up.
Yes.
The other thing I wanted to be sure and mention, it wasn't so much a part of today's presentation, but I know I've heard it in the media recently, and that's collaboration with our courts. So I'm hoping that maybe someone can come and touch on that. I know there's a lot of discussion around collaborating with the court system. I'd like to know the mechanics of how that's being done.
Who's going to take the big question? Come on down.
So part of that meeting I talked about as we prepared our strategy, it was important for us to meet with all stakeholders. We met with the 19 JDC. We met with our juvenile court judges, as well as all those other partners. I wasn't at that meeting because I had but Deputy Chief Daniels was there, and I'll let him give you some feedback on some of the areas we all can improve on.
Good evening, everyone. Deputy Chief Myron Daniels. As the Chief stated, we realized a long time ago that this is not just an issue that, as has been said, that we're dealing with individually. The criminal justice system is exactly that, a system. So we've had those meetings with those partners. Specifically, we've also had meetings with our judges from the 19 JDC as well as our judges from our juvenile division. In those meetings, they also discussed some of the actions that they thought would help during that process, to include the times that they actually looked at documentation to accept bonds or to accept bonds. They also had quite a few other things to look at, to include bond hearings and things to ensure that they had all the facts as they move to set bonds. As we talked before, and the district attorney made that point, that process is a lot harder than we all know. So we all got educated in the process. We educated them on some things, and they educated us on some things as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank Mayor Broom and her team and all of those members of law enforcement, our DA, for coming down. Public safety is extremely important to all of us, but I think we have to be very clear. The public plays an important role in helping to ensure that we are all safe. And I'm not going to say that. I was going to get ready to talk to the geniuses in our community committing crime, but I'm not going to do that. Thank you very much, Mayor. Who wants to say something? Councilmember Coleman.
Like a Councilwoman Coleman, yeah, let the record reflect. As I sit here, first of all of you are to be commended. So, and I'm talking about the police, the sheriff, the DA, the mayor, everybody. This is collaboration at its finest. And so I know that you all have put a lot in this to come and do. And then so, you know, it's very important that you hold on to that which you know and believe can work. It is very, very important. And we must understand that this is not on the shoulders of one particular office. We must understand, as council persons sitting up here, we represent Baton Rouge. And so when you ask questions about when will the positions be filled, and this is not just with this entity, this is throughout, where folk with no jobs and whatever, and folk are having issues with filling. And so what we must do is be responsible, be a part of this collaboration, and say, I am going to make sure that I reach out and see who it is that I can bring to the table, that I can give as some folk. I've already got 2 chiefs, so I got that for you. And so crime areas of concern, yeah, I represent 10. And 10 has some areas that are of concern. And so I am glad for this collaborative effort. And in order for that, it can get started quickly there. And then we've got to understand that it is time out. It is time out for us trying to make wrong right. If it's wrong, and we need to deal with that which is wrong. And that's why you all are in the positions that you all are in. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I think the rest of us want to see all of you all go home safely. Now, I would like to say about, all the collaboration. And I think that was Mocha, someone that mentioned something about the judges. And so let that not be a missing piece, because if they are with all the everything that we're putting in place here, and it's needed, let the record reflect, it is needed, and with all that we are putting in place, when the rules, the laws, the whatever are broken and they are incarcerated, they should not be right back out in a short period of time. So we need to make sure that everybody is on board with this and that our judges are definitely included in this collaborative effort. And so I say to all of you, from the, I'm going to say the mayor because that's the lady in the house. The mayor and the rest of you gentlemen know that whatever we can do in 10, that we are more than happy to do that. And I believe the rest of my folk in here are ready to step forward and help. And so this is excellent what you all have put together. And so I know and they know Rome wasn't built overnight. So you have to come back to the table and perfect and then go back. So I thank you all.
Thank you, Councilwoman Coleman. Councilmember Dunn.
Thank you. A lot has been made about the vacancies in BRPD or the sheriff's office, and a lot of comments have been made about law enforcement, boots on the ground, and that approach. And I know a lot of people are going to focus on that, but Reverend Anderson and Hiller made some great points, and I don't want us to overlook those. As Reverend Anderson said, we've had this war on drugs, tough on crime approach since the 80s, but yet we're still building more prisons. We're still locking more people up. You know, we're having murder rates higher than we've ever had before. So we know by experience over the last 20 or 30 years that those are no deterrents to crime. All right? And first of all, crime is a poverty issue. It's a lack of opportunity issue. When folks don't have jobs, folks don't have incomes, folks don't have opportunity to take care of them and their families, some folks are going to live poor without, but others are going to turn to alternative means to put food on the table, to take care of rent and things of that nature. That may not be something you'll do, but we're seeing it over and over. Folks are turning to the streets to take care of them and their families. And it's incumbent upon us to create more jobs, more income opportunities, more education to catch individuals before they enter into the mindset to go to crime. Because I'm going to tell you something. Once the mindset is there, more police not going to stop it. More police is not going to stop it. It's not going to turn it around. And I'm not giving up on this generation, but to be honest, some of these folks are not going to be rehabilitated. Some will, some won't. The key is to catch them before they get into the mentality. And that's about the front end that Hiller talked about. Investing more money on crime deterrent, mentoring, tutoring, education, jobs. That's where we need to focus. I thought Reverend Anderson said something also. You know, AK-47s are not manufactured in these neighborhoods in here. They're not manufactured in the bottom, in Tigerland, in the park, in Dixie. You know, kilograms are not packaged and manufactured and housed in these neighborhoods either. But yet we find them there. So some focus need to be made on these boats, planes, and vehicles that's bringing them into our community. You know, we have a lot of people from the inner city getting time and getting thrown away with some of these, you know, football numbers of years in jail. But we know that these resources, the drugs and the guns, don't originate in the inner city. So there needs to be some focus on that as well. Thank you, everybody, for your time and coming to report. And I just wanted to put that on our minds.
Councilmember Hurst.
I'm glad this topic came up today. The mayor and I just had a great conversation yesterday. Couple of comments are, and how do we get there? We got to figure that piece of it out. But how do we meet the national average to pay police officers so we don't lose some of our best and brightest talent that are going to school for criminal justice, moving to Atlanta, moving to Dallas, Austin, Houston, and some of those areas? Don't have the answer, but I definitely want to work with you guys to solve it. All right, number two is they hit it on the head 2 and 3 times in different ways, but poverty is the number one issue when we talk about what crime is stirring up from. And the mayor and I talked about an economic development plan for North Baton Rouge that may take about 15 years. Right, it didn't happen in a day, it won't be fixed in a day. But what we can do is leverage our community centers and start opening them up after the council on aging leaves and start doing youth programming on a consistent basis to make sure that we find out what are some of the interests of the kids that are running around in the streets. How can we meet them where they are and then put programming in place to mitigate, because the Bible says that idle time is the devil's workshop, right? And so we get rid of some of that idle time and we put programming in place that ensures that they have the resources that they need in the community. Number one, food. You know, there's some programs out there, some kids leave school, the last meal they had was at 12 o'clock, or maybe the brown bag that they took home. So if they ate it at 3, they're hungry by 6 or 7. What are they doing to get their food? Okay, maybe they're interested in music, or maybe they're interested in STEM programs. So some of the things that I'm doing in District 5 is talking with Exxon about creating a STEM program in the community center after hours. That was a major conversation I had with the mayor of how do we fund that? How do we fund the after-hour workers? So my background is working with kids. I'm here because I have a passion for the youth. So this is right up my alley, and I welcome any conversations and conversation and collaboration to help close that gap.
Thank you. Any other council members? Mayor Broom, I'm coming to you. You want to come now before they talk, or you want to wait? How would you like your house? Who would you want?
No, whenever y'all.
Okay. Anybody else wants any comments? Come on, Mayor Broom.
I'm going to be brief because I know you all have a lengthy agenda, but this has been a very robust and meaningful conversation and discussion that we've had here. And certainly we have talked for years about crime, the approach to crime being a comprehensive approach. And we are not negligent when it comes to understanding that we also have to have programs, law enforcement, organizations. It's all a part of this complex equation. As you all recall, last year, we dedicated money for our Safe, Hopeful, and Healthy initiative. You all remember that because we had to come before you all to get it approved. And so we have invested $2.5 million in 2021 towards programs for families. Just last year, we helped 95 families who were in crisis through some of those dollars. You heard me talk earlier about the $14.9 million. That's all programmatic work that we're doing. So you're absolutely right. We could have another conversation apart from a council meeting, just talking about the different elements of criminal behavior, what happens in communities, poverty, all of the disinvestment, and how that feeds in to bad behavior, how it feeds into communities where you have high crime. But I do think, certainly, as I've heard all of you all speak here this evening, and as we've heard our presenters tonight, I believe we are on a trajectory to turn things around. So I just want to thank you all for being so concerned, being vested, being in alignment of us developing safe, hopeful, and healthy communities in this city and parish. Thank you so much.
Councilman Murray, want to speak again?
Yeah, and I just want to say thank you to the mayor. I mean, when I met with her yesterday, it was yes, and, even willing to shift some things towards after-school program. So I want you to know when we do engage, she is responding appropriately. Thank you for that, Mayor.
Councilman Moe.
Yes, I'd just like to follow up with the mayor and kind of what Councilman Dunn said. We talked about programs and programs in place and reaching out and trying to identify these areas and people and get them into the right programs and everything. And we speak about what programs we've implemented. Question to the mayor's office or anyone that can speak to this. Do you feel like we have the programs in place that are needed, or do you feel like we need to implement more programs to accomplish some of these goals? Because we talk a lot of the times about studying and programs and doing this and these outreaches and so on and so forth. And I think a lot of people see that. Don't get me wrong. I truly appreciate everything that we've done as a parish to implement a lot of these things and kick them off. But do we feel like we have enough programs in place, maybe just a different way to implement them, or do we not have enough programs and we're looking to implement more to accomplish some of these goals that Councilman Dunn had spoke about?
Excellent question, and I'm glad you asked that. I had recently a conversation with a group of the community interventionists, people who are boots on the ground, who are going in the community. All I did primarily was listen to what they were saying about what people are saying and what they encounter in the community. at the end of their comments, one of the things that I heard, and I've heard this before, I've heard it on when reporters put a mic in somebody's face in the community or something, they're like, we need more programs. And then I start thinking about all the programs that I know we have here in this city and parish. This evening, we just retired Pat from the Boys and Girls Club. And I mean, we have a list of programs. Now, let me tell you where we're falling short. People are not connected to the resources. We, as a community, we have to do a better job of letting people know about the programs, about the resources that exist, because people just genuinely don't know. We think nowadays that as soon as we put something on Facebook or Instagram, everybody knows about it. But we've got to do a better job of doing it. And when I say we, I mean our office, everybody. But on top of that, Councilman, you're absolutely right. We need to invest on the front end with programs even more. Because if we do that, I am convinced that we will see better results, and that's where the change not only takes place in terms of transforming our communities when it comes to crime, but we're talking about building the next generation of citizens in this city and community who are going to contribute to the well-being of our community overall. And so, yes, we do have programs. We need to do a better job of getting the information out about the programs that we have. You all probably get the same amount of requests almost that I do about nonprofit organizations who are doing things for students and for young people. But we need to let people know about those. We got to do a better job of connecting. And then I think there's always room for improvement in terms of adding to existing programs.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I agree. I think you hit the nail on the head. What I took out of that response was, we do have the programs in place. We need to better implement getting people and connecting with those programs. And I really appreciate that, because a lot of people here in the thing, well, here we go, we're creating another program, we're creating another group, we're creating another this, and so on and so forth. And how long is it going to take to implement that? And I'm glad you said that for the public. We have the programs in place. I agree, we do need to find a better way to connect these peoples, these areas, these different ways. And you're right, Facebook, Twitter, Flitter, whatever you want to call it, all these different things that are out there, that's not the way to do it. It's the way, whether it's, direct into the communities, through the police, sheriff's, DA's office, or things like that. And last thing I'd like to reiterate on is, the reason I wanted to bring up these programs and everything, programs, they do work. We get them connected, we do things, but then you brought up the fact that people still are going to get sometimes in that mindset. And I'll reiterate what Councilwoman Coleman said is, when they do that, we have to be prepared on the back end to follow through with, the courts and the DAs and the things like that, so that does keep those people off the street. That once they do make that decision and they cross that line, we have to be prepared to execute what we have in place to make sure those people don't get back on the street also. So again, closing with, I think this was a great conversation. I think everybody has pretty much hit the nail on the head. Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you so much, Mayor Broom, for that report. We sincerely appreciate it, and thank you for all of our guests who came to participate in the conversation. We are now